Yanis Varoufakis does not need an introduction, but I will give it a go. Former Greek finance minister, university professor, author, political leader, and I would add to that, activist and truth and justice seeker. I'm a big fan, and I always have been. And one of the attributes that I admire most in Yanis Varoufakis is that whether you agree with his views or not, he has an unwavering consistency and commitment for fighting for what he believes to be morally correct. A man active in the political sphere with integrity, who does not mince his words, hard to find in these dark days. I had the pleasure and honor to interview Yanis for Uncensored Voices. The recording took place on Friday, the 22nd of November, just 24 hours after the ICC issued arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant.
Good afternoon and welcome to everybody watching us today. It is a great pleasure and an honor for me indeed to have Yanis Varoufakis on Uncensored Voices, where voices are not censored, where we will have an interesting conversation about everything that is going on in the world today. Let's start from what is in the headlines for the past 24 hours, and that is the ICC arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and his ex-minister, Yoav Gallant. Welcome, first of all, to Uncensored Voices.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start from the ICC decision to issue arrest warrants for Yoav Gallant and Benjamin Netanyahu. What is your take on that? Do you think anything will happen?
Well, to begin with, before we look into the future, let's look into the last 6 months, during which the ICC has been sitting on its hands after the chief prosecutor on the 20th of May issued a request to the ICC to issue those warrants. It took 6 months. One can say that better late than never, but I shall remind you that in a similar situation when Vladimir Putin was being indicted, it took 17 days from the moment the prosecutor demanded the issue of the warrants to the issue of the warrants. That's just one tiny little detail. The fact which needs to be focused upon is that this is an existential decision for the ICC. Had it not made it, it would effectively annulled its own reasons for existing. Over the last year and a few months, since the 7th of October 2023, Israel has placed the entire population of Gaza on death row. Everyone who is not dead already is on death row now. Its genocidal rampage has exposed the West's hypocrisy and how Western supposed values are nothing but a smokescreen for the naked brutality, which is functional to the manner in which Israel is reproducing its apartheid state and ethnic cleansing project. So from that perspective, from a historical perspective, the International Criminal Court's indictment of genocidal maniacs like Netanyahu and Gallant, this is nothing less, nothing more than a ray of light in a world which is getting darker on a daily basis. So what's going to happen? Well, the ICC is at the same time relevant and irrelevant. It doesn't have a police force that can storm into Netanyahu's office and remove him and take him to The Hague. But at the same time, more than 100 nation states have an obligation to the ICC to arrest Netanyahu and Gallant the moment they step on their territory. And that includes the whole of the European Union. It includes most countries in Africa, many countries in Asia, not the United States, but many countries in Latin America. So essentially, Netanyahu and Gallant are facing arrest if they step on the soil of any of these countries, including ours, including Cyprus, including Greece, including Germany and France, which puts our governments in a very well-deserved but tight spot. So today I issued a personal question or an open letter, if you want, to Greece's Prime Minister, Mr. Mitsotakis, saying to him, Mr. Mitsotakis, can you confirm that if your great friend, Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, steps on Greek soil, Greek police will arrest him as they have a duty? And by the way, I think this is an important point, and this is the last one I'll make. In regard to this question, to this particular question, it's not a political decision. So let me give you a stark example.
It's a legal decision. It's right.
It's actually an obligation of the police. So if Netanyahu visits Berlin, it is not up to the government, to the federal government in Berlin, to decide whether they will arrest him or not. According to law, German police has to respond to this warrant and apprehend him immediately, whatever Chancellor Olaf Scholz says. Similarly here in Greece. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that the police will have what it takes in order to arrest Netanyahu without the say-so of the government, but it does place in sharp relief the whole notion of international law, at least in Europe.
Okay, so you think that there is a shift just by the fact that they made a decision to issue arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu? I mean, a lot of people that I've been talking to today, I said, don't expect to see Benjamin Netanyahu in handcuffs within the next few days. This is not something that's going to happen. But it is a shift in that the ICC stood up to America and the rest of the colonialist powers, be it Great Britain, Germany, and Europe.
It is a turning point. It is important that this is the first time any Israeli has been indicted by international law for the permanent crime against humanity, which is being unfolding since 1948, since the Nakba. This is the very first time an Israeli has been indicted. It's not with scoffed at. Of course, he's not going to end up in handcuffs tomorrow or day after or even ever. But the fact that he cannot travel to Paris, to London, to Berlin, to Athens without the fear of being not indicted, without the fear of being arrested, that's a major blow to the Zionist apartheid state. And also, I think that it shifts the tectonic plates, both of international diplomacy and of the media. Because the media, especially the Western media, have been complicit in the genocide over the last year and a half. They have underplayed and downplayed the war crimes against humanity, the crimes against humanity, the war crimes against Palestinians, not just in Gaza, but in East Jerusalem, in the West Bank, in South Lebanon. In Europe, the preposterous decisions by the German government, the Austrian government. On a personal note, I was mightily amused when I was banned from entering Germany for not supporting genocide, because it seems to me that in Germany today you can only talk about genocide if you support it, not if you oppose it. And all that is going to shift already. You can see that, ever since the ICC indicted Netanyahu and Gallant, the German government has not come up with any statement. Essentially, they are declaring to the world that they are gobsmacked by their own moral failures.
Yeah, well, you could see that because it was only a few days ago that the Bundestag voted on a resolution which is called Never Again, which actually curtails many liberties and actually violates a lot of human rights by saying that any criticism against the state of Israel is considered to be anti-Semitic, which to me, that in itself is anti-Semitic, because to say that Israel represents all Jews, so when Israel is attacking another population, another people, it's doing it in the name of all Jewish people, that in itself is anti-Semitic. But I mean, it's obvious that Germany will not easily change its mind. And is that because of, I keep hearing this, but I don't think I believe it as much, is that because of the guilt that Germany feels over what they did to the Jewish population during the Second World War? I find it's hard to believe that you would go on and do another genocide, another Holocaust on another population just because you're feeling guilty of something that you did in the 40s.
I reject the guilt theory.
Thank you.
For a very simple reason. Back in April, when DiEM25, the movement I belong to, and the German Jewish organization, which is called Just Peace in the Middle East, Jewish Voice for the Just Peace in the Middle East. We staged that Palestine Congress, and the title of the Congress was A Just Peace in the Middle East, not anything provocative, really, unless you think that peace is a provocation. And the only people who were arrested as part of our Congress, I wasn't there. I was going to Zoom in, but I was banned even from Zooming in. But the people who were there on the ground, our organization, DiEM25, and the Jewish Voice for Peace in the Middle East, the only people who were arrested were two comrades, both Jewish. In particular, the first one, Udi Ratz, a young man, a German Jew. Right? He tried to enter the building where the Palestine Congress was due to take place. And he had a little placard that he had written himself, and it read, "Jews against genocide." And he was arrested by a white Aryan policeman. This Jewish young man was arrested for opposing genocide. And he was handcuffed. And while he was being handcuffed, he joked. He said, "So if my placard read Jews in favor of genocide, would that have been okay?" He was actually beaten up. He was beaten up in public. He was actually struck and hit and thrown on the ground. And then he was arrested and thrown into jail. Another comrade, Iris Hefetz, a German-Israeli citizen, German-Israeli Jew psychoanalyst in Berlin. She paraded around on her own in a central square with another placard saying, "Not in my name," against the genocide of Palestinians. And she was arrested for anti-Semitism. So when you have white German policemen attacking, assaulting, and arresting Jews because they're against genocide, I can't believe that this has anything to do with guilt over genocide, over the Holocaust. If you want my theory, I'll just tell you in brief. After 1945, as Germany was being rebuilt and the industrial miracle was being erected, and Germany was exiting the nightmare of the Second World War, with the guilt, with a mixture, actually, on the contradictory feelings. There was guilt on the one hand, and at the same time, a deeper feeling, which they didn't feel like expressing. It was not cool to express it, that yes, Hitler was a terrible man and all that, but the Germans suffered a lot from the Soviets, from, women were raped and so on during the occupation of Germany by the Allies. During that period, the conservative forces that were rebuilding a very conservative Germany, remember the Confederation of German Industry had the same head as they did under the Nazis. Many of the judges were the same as they were under the Nazis. So the denazification process is wildly exaggerated. So during that time, with a lot of guilt as well over the Holocaust thrown into the mix, it became impossible for conservative Germans to be nationalist. German nationalism was no longer feasible. And this is a great conundrum for a conservative state, especially one that is being rebuilt as an economic superpower. Because nationalism is the glue and the cement that holds together a capitalist society, which is creating a nation state, with the state and the capitalist sector being very much in solidarity with one another, and there's a positive reinforcement mechanism between the nationalist state, the industry, the capitalist sector. And at some point in the 1960s, not immediately, not in the 50s, the void of nationalism, which was no longer permissible, was filled with Zionism. So effectively, Zionism replaced German nationalism. It became the official religion, if you want, of the German conservative nationalist state. And so in other words, they took somebody else's nationalism, the right-wing Israelis' particular kind of Zionism. And that is where you will find, where I find at least, the origins of the identification of the German state with the Israeli state. Angela Merkel expressed this clearly when she said that the state reason, the raison d'etre of the Israeli state is identical to the raison d'etre of the German state, which is just absurd and utterly inconsistent with any concept of jurisprudence, with any concept of European integrity to begin with. Because why would you want to identify yourself with a foreign state which is pursuing a policy of ethnic cleansing and apartheid if you are a democratic European nation? Well, the other reason that their own nationalism was not cool anymore.
Yeah, you mentioned European integrity. Is there European integrity? I mean, it was Wednesday, I believe, that the foreign ministers of Europe voted on not cutting a dialogue with Israel and economic and other ties that the European Union has with Israel. Even though Josep Borrell, who's not one of my favorites, has been critical of Israel, and he was the one that pushed for this to go forward. It was, they voted against it.
Europe is complicit in the genocide of the Palestinian people, in the same way that it was responsible for the genocide of the Australian Aborigines, of so many native populations in Africa, in the Congo, in South America, in Central America, and so on. The brief period, the brief window during which there was an attempt around Europe to bind together a social democratic agenda for the people of Europe with an agenda for the rest of the world which would reverse the ills of European imperialism and colonialism, that brief window has closed a long time ago. And especially since the 7th of October of 2023, when Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, who has absolutely no democratic legitimacy whatsoever, she's just a manager of a cartel, she flew to Israel and stood in front of Israeli tanks just before they invaded Gaza as a cheerleader of the genocide that was being underway. And to think that our great and good leaders in Europe reappointed her, rewarded her for that essential symbolic act of complicity to the genocide by reappointing her. Well, Europe, while losing its technological prowess, while becoming a technological desert, while languishing in a 15-year-old crisis, economic crisis, which is depleting its capacity to be relevant in the world, while failing spectacularly to play any significant or positive role in world affairs, it is diving headlong into a moral vacuum, a moral void when it comes to Palestine primarily, but also its support of the endless war in Ukraine, of the never-ending war in Ukraine, which is killing so many thousands of people every day, purposelessly, without any sign that something good can ever come out of this war. The manner in which the European Union is even cutting its nose to spite its face. I mean, just think of it. The Ukrainian American intelligence services blew up the Nord Stream 1 pipeline, which was a German government investment. And Germany can't even bring itself to condemning this act of terrorism against its own industry. The manner in which European powers take the Libya catastrophe, the interventions in Libya that turned that country into not just a failed state, but a series of battlefields, of never-ending battles. Germany was supporting one warlord. France was supporting another warlord. I mean, to come back to the first sentence in your question, to be talking about European integrity these days, of course, is to be essentially courting with ridicule.
You mentioned that Europe is now not so relevant. Is that the reason that the European Union and Europe is basically the following, to say the least, I'm using a very mild word, the United States of America? And maybe it is the time for the European Union to disengage or disconnect in a way from the US. And I did hear you on another interview on a podcast that you had given, saying that maybe Trump's election as president of the United States of America is an opportunity for Europe to become something apart from being America's, doing what America wants, what the United States of America wants.
It is an opportunity, but there is no doubt that it will be missed, because Europe is fantastic at missing every opportunity presented to it. Look, the European Union was always dependent on the United States from day one. I keep saying this, it doesn't make me very popular in European circles, that the European Union, the European Common Market, and before that, the European Community of Coal and Steel, which was the first name of the European Union, was always an American design. It was part of the New Deal's post-war plan, which was embedded within the broader system of the Bretton Woods financial system. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I grew up as a Europeanist. I like the idea that we will do away with borders and that we will create a Commonwealth in Europe, or a Commons. The problem, however, is that the European Union, the way it emerged, as I said, it was a cartel of big business. It was never a serious attempt in consolidating democracy across Europe. But to cut a very long story short, and I could be talking about this forever, the fact of the matter is that after 2008, the great financial collapse, which exposed the flimsy foundations on which our monetary union, the Eurozone, was built, and started a domino effect, with Greece being the first country to fall. Then you had Ireland, Portugal, Spain, Italy, and then the whole thing essentially became unsustainable. And then the European Central Bank came in and started printing rivers of money, which of course it gave to the bankers, which they gave it to the big business personnel who bought shares and assets, creating huge new paper wealth for themselves, while at the same time austerity was being inflicted upon the majority of Europeans, which meant that the big business never invested. So for the last 15 years, Europe has not been investing in its own industry. And now you can see the collapse of the German industrial model as a result. 15 years is a very long time not to have an investment, when China and the United States are investing as if there's no tomorrow. So the economic foundation of Europe is now brittle. It is breaking up. We have missed one or sometimes two industrial revolutions, technological revolutions, when it comes to all the technology of the future, every single technology of the future, whether it's batteries for cars, for storage, whether it is artificial intelligence, algorithms, whether it is the green transition more generally, green energy, wind turbines, solar panels. We produce none of that. And what we produce is not competitive with the Chinese or the Americans, for that matter, or the Indians. So Europe has become economically brittle, and you can see the reflection of that on the political scene. There used to be some interesting and powerful leaders like François Mitterrand or Helmut Kohl or even Angela Merkel. Whatever one thinks about them, they were powerful. Merkel commanded the room, whatever room, whether it was in Brussels or even in Washington. Today, nothing. There's just void. Germany doesn't have a government. France doesn't have a government. And even when Scholz and Macron had a majority in parliament, they were irrelevant, absolutely irrelevant, even within their own countries. I mean, think about it. Suppose that tomorrow morning, I keep giving this example to people who say, oh, come on, Yanis, Europe is very rich, it's very powerful. No, it's not. I mean, we're still very rich. So we can keep wasting our collective wealth for many, many years to come. But we are irrelevant, absolutely irrelevant. If tomorrow morning a peace process begins, hopefully under the auspices of the United Nations, for Ukraine, we know who will represent Ukraine, Zelensky. We know who will represent Russia, Putin. We know who will represent the United States. It will be Trump soon. India will be represented by Modi. China will be represented by Xi Jinping. Who's going to represent Europe? Ursula. Ursula doesn't have the legitimacy to represent even her own country. She's despised in Germany. The reason why Merkel put her in Brussels was because she wanted to get rid of her as a failed and corrupt defense minister. Yeah. And she's not, we never elected her. Her presidency was concocted behind closed doors. The president of France, Macron, or whoever replaces him, is mistrusted by the Poles, the Lithuanians, the Estonians. They will veto any representation of Europe in a Ukrainian peace process by the French president, whoever is the French president. The same thing applies to the German chancellor. And yet, the money for rebuilding Ukraine will have to come from the Franco-German axis. So the people who will have to make the decisions to pay for Ukraine will not represent us in the Ukraine peace process. That I'm giving you this as an example of the absolute radical irrelevance of the European Union. We are the most advanced in many ways continent in the world. We're perhaps the richest, okay? And toxic, irrelevant, stupid. We're the stupid continent. This is what Europe is now. It is demonstrably the stupidest continent that has ever coexisted with the rest of humanity.
Yeah. I'd like to bring the conversation closer to home. And you did mention Mr. Mitsotakis and that you did do an open letter to him, asking him if he would arrest Benjamin Netanyahu if he sets foot in Greece. So I'll bring it closer to my home of Cyprus. For the past 10 years, at least, Cyprus has intensified its ties with Israel through various manners, mainly because of the gas and energy exploitation and the drilling and everything else that's going on in that department. Cyprus being in the Middle East, in the Levant, on the crossroads between Asia and the European Union, as well as having more than 30% of its land occupied by Turkey, is in a very sticky situation. What is your take on that? Is our involvement in this genocide, because I do believe that we are complicit in the way that this government especially has behaved, are we getting into a stickier situation? Just a reminder of Nasrallah's warnings towards Cyprus that if we did give up any of our airports, apart from the bases, for the use of the US and NATO, that they would attack. Our government has now decided that we are giving one of our ports, our naval bases, basically, in Mari, for the US military to renovate as such. That was the word that they used. And we do know now that even Larnaca Airport and Paphos Airport are being used, not just the bases, for sending weapons and arms to Israel. Is there, I'm not going to ask, is there a way out of this? What is at stake, do you believe, for Cyprus?
Its integrity. Cyprus is, as you said, as we all know, occupied. A large part of Cyprus are occupied territories. Those occupied territories are never going to be returned or become part of an integrated whole Cyprus again by means of force. Anyone who thinks that Israel is going to send parts of the IDF, battalions of the IDF, to side with Greek Cypriots in order to take the north of the island back needs the head to be examined. It would be absolute madness, right?
Yanis, just to give you a context, you having said that, Israel is already taking over the north by itself because they're investing in real estate and buying property, because it's something that they do anyway in the settlements in the West Bank. They're buying property which belongs to Greek Cypriots from the north. So basically, they're already settling northern Cyprus. Yeah.
But
yes, sorry for interrupting. Yeah.
But I wanted to make the point that anybody who thinks that the military alliance with Israel is in the interest of Cyprus needs a serious visit at a psychiatrist. The only means that we have, not just as Greek Cypriots, but also as Turkish Cypriots, to bring together the reunification of Cyprus, which is supposed to be the objective of every political force and every political movement and party in Cyprus. Supposed to be. Right? By cozying up to an apartheid state, which whose parliament last June voted that there will never be a Palestinian state in the occupied territories, and that the occupied territories are the land of Israel. In other words, the Knesset has declared that a territory which, according to the United Nations and international law, is considered to be non-Israeli, that it's occupied, that it is illegally occupied, that illegally occupied territory is annexed by right by Israel. The moment Cyprus, the government of Cyprus, causes up to this regime, essentially it's causing up to the notion that the occupied territories can be annexed by the occupier on a whim. Is there a greater gift one could give to anyone in Ankara who wants simply to annex the north of Cyprus? I don't think there is. So the cozying up, the close relationship between the Greek Cypriot government, the Cypriot government, and Israel is manifestly one of the greatest acts of self-harm in the history of international diplomacy.
And having said that, we all know, especially the people who know what's going on in Cyprus at this moment in time, Erdogan and Tatar are asking for a two-state solution. So it is, we're giving it to them on a plate, basically, by the way that this government especially has acted towards Israel, refusing to condemn anything that is going on at this moment in time. I think the last time I heard a condemnation from them was only on the 7th of October, and that's it, when they said, I stand with Israel, which was, of course, led by Ursula von der Leyen, because we seem to be running after Ursula von der Leyen for some reason.
The reason is really very simple, and it's got to do with the military base of the US Navy that you mentioned, Ursula von der Leyen doesn't exist. It's a figment of her own imagination. She only has whatever power she has because she's essentially an agent of Washington, D.C. She is very much disliked by the French government. She's hugely disliked by the German government, even though she's German. You have to remember that Olaf Scholz, the Chancellor of Germany, voted against Ursula von der Leyen's tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. That would be unheard of a few years ago. The German Chancellor to be voting or voting against and losing a German President of the European Commission. So one can say, but is she that independent? You know, she was sent there by the German government, and now she's acting against the German government. No, she's not. She's simply the agent of the United States. She's pursuing the policies of the United States because the United States, through NATO, ever since Putin invaded illegally the Ukraine, essentially NATO has taken over the European Union. And therefore, when your own president, Mr. Christopoulos and so on, when they are copying Ursula von der Leyen, effectively what they are declaring to the people of Cyprus and to the world is that they are actively trying to be lackeys of Washington, D.C. themselves. So let's not mince our words on this.
No, it's evident. I think it is evident. And thank you for coming out and saying it the way it is, because it is so clear and so evident. We've known for years that on the bases, we had American soldiers. It's been well known, well documented. Declassified UK has been doing reports on it constantly. But now it is also evident that they are using the airports by on Cypriot soil, because they've been using the excuse that we can't do anything about it because that British bases basically are sovereign British bases, so it's British territory. It's not Cypriot territory. But now there is no excuse because they are using Cypriot territory and they are renovating the base, the naval base in Mari. In closing this conversation, I would like you to give me your insight on the way forward, as well as giving our viewers a bigger picture of what DiEM25 is, Mera Gospende, and where do you see Mera Gospende DiEM25 within the efforts of changing the world, of making this world a better place. I don't want to sound too romantic, but I do still believe that that should be our main goal. That should be our end game, our target to whatever we do in this life, to try at least to leave behind a better world for our children and other people's children.
Those of us who put together DiEM25 in February of 2016 did so because we could see what was coming. Back then we said our slogan in Berlin, that's where we inaugurated DiEM25, was Europe will either democratize or it will disintegrate. Well, it turns out that we have failed to push Europe down the road of democratization. This is why now it's disintegrating. Of course, nobody wants to be verified in that manner. We ourselves, we try to do something really very hard and at the same time something essential. Since all our problems are collective, and it is very hard to imagine one country managing within Europe to solve problems which transcend borders. Like, for instance, not only climate change, which you cannot fix within your own country, right? By definition. But also the questions of debt, of poverty, of security, of migration. These require pan-European solutions, since they are pan-European problems, if not global problems. So in creating DiEM25, we created something that never existed before, a transnational movement. And what do I mean by that? We're not just a confederacy of different parties that are created in different countries. When you join DiEM25, you join as a member, not as a Greek or as a German. We don't have in our coordinating committee, which, by the way, is meeting in Athens today, tomorrow, and on Sunday across Europe. Coordinating committee. This committee comprises 12 people who've been elected, not as Greeks or French. It's a purely transnational attempt. Now, that's very hard to do because Europe is a very large place. And especially given that our agenda was always an agenda of confronting the vested interests that are fragmenting Europe, which are absolutely determined not to allow any degree of democracy in Brussels. We're not doing very well. We are fantastically successful in the sense that we exist and we have 140,000 members across Europe, but that's tiny compared to the mountain that we have to climb. But our objective, I'm being utterly honest with you, is to keep. It's a bit like a candle in the darkness, which is Europe today. A candle can perform the task of spreading a few rays of light and maintaining the hope that this can illuminate our continent. We are growing in countries like Sweden, in Finland, in places like Serbia, in Slovenia, and we are creating this bridge with other movements, with the peace movement, with the Solidarity with Palestine movement. We have an agenda for creating a non-aligned, independent Europe, that which is not going to happen as a result of the shenanigans of our great and good prime ministers and presidents. It's a long road ahead, but I do believe that DiEM25 is the only vehicle that can actually travel that road.
That's a very positive note. I did say it was going to be one of my last questions, but I would like to ask you one more question. Do you believe that what we are witnessing today, because you have said that DiEM25 has been struggling and it's an uphill road, but you're still going at it. Do you believe that what we are witnessing today are the rattlings of the fall of an empire? And when I say empire, obviously, I mean the colonialist project, which is called United States of America, Great Britain, and Europe, because that's what they have been doing all these years.
Well, Europe and Great Britain are not great anymore, and they have faded. They are, as I was saying before, they're irrelevant now. The United States, on the other hand, is still hegemonic, and even though it is shrinking in economic significance in terms of manufacturing. So as we speak, Chinese manufacturing is more than twice the size of American manufacturing.
And they've got BRICS on the other side as well, haven't they now?
Yeah. Indeed. But that's a very loose confederacy. Mm-hmm. So there's an almighty clash between the United States and China. The United States depend entirely for their hegemony, not on their army, but on their currency, on the dollar. It's a power of the dollar that keeps the United States hegemonic. That is challenged by China now, seriously, with the development, particularly of the digital currency of the Central Bank of China, but also of other digital transaction technologies. And this is why we see this fervor with which first Donald Trump in 2017-18 and then Joe Biden pursue the new Cold War, which may become a hot war with China. Fingers crossed it doesn't, but it is a clear and present danger. The extractive powers, the neo-colonial powers of big business, of big, large-scale capital remain exorbitant. These powers remain, not only remain large, but also are growing. So it's very early days, and I don't think it would be legitimate and accurate to start talking about the death throes of colonial power of the United States as a hegemon. My great fear is that when it inevitably starts happening, that is, when the American hegemony starts fading, a wounded beast can be much more dangerous than a beast in rude health. And given the accumulation of destructive technologies, and I'm not talking just about nuclear weapons, but also chemical weapons, artificial intelligence-driven robots or devices by which to kill people, that a fading empire may not only prevent us from getting together to prevent the climate catastrophe from reaching the point of no return, but it may even blow us up before that happens. So we are on a knife's edge. Humanity is on a knife's edge. We have no right to imagine that Deus Ex Machina is going to save us tomorrow morning from disaster, or that it will bring about the democratization of the hegemonic power of the very, very few. We have a lot of work to do.
I think it was just wishful thinking on my part.
Well, yes.
Yes. And thank you very much for this conversation.
No,
I don't know if you'd like to say something to end this. I would like to just say, I hope that, I know there is Meragospende in Cyprus as well. I wish that you grow even more here as well, because we need different voices. We need voices to be heard. And for the time being, it's only the left in Cyprus which has a different route from what the other parties are talking about it, and on Palestine, and on the Palestine issue, and on the Cyprus problem issue. They seem to have teamed up, and it's only the left voicing a different voice.
If I can have one last word before we close, it will be a very simple one. And the most revolutionary and hopeful idea that comes to mind is a phrase by the late friend David Graeber, who said, "Everything could be different."
Thank you. Thank you very much, Yanis.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Mine.